Buyer's agents best buy for 2021. Luke Moroney talks about his best buy in 2021 and what it took to find something like that.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
He's frozen on us.
Who is Luke?
There we go.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Revving it up. I love it.
Good morning.
Top of the morning to you.
Great
Top
morning.
of the morning. Billy, over to you.
Quick fire. Let's hammer him with questions. Welcome, Luke. This is a big day for us because I've been watching you comment on our videos and being a part of the show. You are a part of the show every single day, and now you're finally on. And I can finally say that I've actually met my first buyer's agent. So this is exciting for me. So I've got a lot of questions, to ask. Should we just start with a bit of quick fire?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go. I'm pumped.
So I suppose for a start, there are like a lot of buyer's agents around. You know, it's obvious that they do a lot of good work. But what would you say the main sort of 3 points are for using a buyer's agent for someone that hasn't heard of it? Because for someone like my mum, she didn't realize they actually existed.
Yeah, absolutely, Billy. I think a lot of people tend to use them now, one, because they're probably time poor. That's a big one. Secondly, they don't have the education, knowledge, or experience. And thirdly, it's about finding those deals, whether they be off-market, pre-market, or actually building that relationship and rapport with the agents to actually make the deal happen. So that is definitely a big one right now for people using a buyer's agent. I think in terms of, we've come a long way in terms of buyer's agency in Australia, because I think it's about 60% of transactions in the US are done using a buyer's agent, whereas opposed to Australia, where it's kind of like it's less than 5%. So it's moving up and up. The awareness is getting out there, and obviously, Billy, your mother's talking about it as well, so it's great.
Yeah, that's huge. So most of your clients, where do you pick those up from? Because a buyer's agent, I've seen a few sort of on socials where they have, smaller shop frontages, things like that. But do you find you're sort of at a different angle of the business where you don't need to have the shop front maybe?
Well, look, it's not overly necessary. It's kind of like the idea of a real estate agent. Do you really need a shop front? There is, pros and cons to it as well. Like, having that awareness, how do you get clients? It's around awareness, right? So if you've seen anything on me on social media, I am everywhere. So whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn. So across all, social media channels, some people like only LinkedIn, some people only like Facebook. So you've got to be across different areas. It's kind of like, are you on billboards? Are you on, for sale signs as a real estate agent? Same way, awareness is out there. We've got email database that we work on. We're on the social media. Referrals is a good one. Word of mouth is so strong, right? Having that warm lead come in and say, we've had their experience, go and see Luke, the team at Search Party Property, and you'll have that experience as well. So it's a big one for us to just, get out there on all different mediums to get clients come through.
So the quick question, it seems like a real estate agent is different. Like you take local people in and you generally sell to local people. It seems like it's very localized, hence the shop front where you may transact 5 suburbs or 3 suburbs in each direction, including the suburb you're actually in. But a buyer's agent, you'll take buyers from all over Sydney, maybe, I don't know, that's what I'm asking, and then you'll sell them something even broader.
Yeah, look, we're getting clients all around the country, and typically we're working with investors. Good morning, Lisa, and we're typically working with investors. But if you're a buyer's agent, you might have a local area, you might have a shop front because you're dealing with people on the eastern suburbs or on the northern beaches or in the inner west. So people may have a shop front, but for us, it is about working with investors. So we're working with the numbers. For us, it's all about where is the low risk, the good cash flow, the good potential for growth. We're typically buying in the Brisbane market right now because of that. And people are looking at, am I an investor in Sydney or Melbourne, as an example, where are the numbers going to work? And most of the time for clients, those numbers work up in the Brisbane or the southeast Queensland market right now.
Are you finding a large amount of, there's been a lot of talk about Queensland, people moving into Queensland, buying property up in Queensland. Are you dealing with what you would call out of area buyers more so than ever?
Yeah, absolutely. People don't know really the Queensland market and how it works. So I guess previously there's been periods of very little growth or no growth. They've had some issues in Queensland with, especially with Brisbane, with some of the flooding that's happened back in 07 and 11. That's created a little bit of a bad stigma around investing in that market. A lot of those problems are now being fixed up. And then to put the layer on top of population growth, we've got a situation where, the Brisbane Olympics is coming in. So there's a rev up of awareness. There's a rev up of investment coming into Queensland. And if you think about the numbers of population growth, because that puts a demand on housing markets in terms of sale prices and rents, you're looking at, in 2020, there was 30,000 people that moved into Queensland. Net migration.
Wow.
If you look at that in comparison to South Australia, they only had 98 people net migration into South Australia in the year of 2020, and that's through COVID.
That's crazy.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's 2020. 2021, I think another 30 or 40,000 people went into Queensland. So it's putting huge demand, and this is why we're seeing prices rise, rents rise significantly as well.
What's net migration for New South Wales?
Negative 18,000 in 2020. So people are typically then moving from New South Wales or Victoria and then into Queensland. So it was kind of like in 2020, 18,000 from New South Wales, 12,000 from Victoria, basically moved up to Queensland.
What's wrong with New South Wales?
Mate, it's affordability. Like, who can, on average, can people really afford to live? And that's why they go from a housing market where it's, properties worth $2 or $3 million, then into unit market that's, $1,800,000. And then, what you're left with, you going to the Central Coast, you're going to Newcastle, you're going to northern New South Wales, and you probably, some people are heading straight into Queensland. Warmer weather, right? It's kind of like the New York, Miami situation where people are going from the cold down to the warm. Same way, Victoria, New South Wales, maybe down from the cold, up from the cold in the south, up to the warm in the north.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Mark?
It sounds just really sad for New South Wales, but I do have to say we have witnessed a sea change and a tree change in the last 2 years. It's been a national one. When the international sea change and tree change begins, and I don't believe it has, but I don't know if that net migration is who's going to be better off there. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think in terms of international migration, typically people are going into Sydney or Melbourne internationally. Then there's a situation where, if it's not as affordable, people have got to think about, where's my next move? Do I go regional? Am I going to Tasmania? Am I going to South Australia? Am I going to Western Australia? Or am I going to Queensland? And I guess right now what we're seeing, it's easy for people to go from Sydney to Brisbane, because it's only an hour away on a flight, right? So you can go back and forth. And I've been up there for 3 hours on a plane, go up on a plane, come back and commute back 3 hours after, going around. It's almost the commute that people have from day to day in Sydney. If you get into the airport, you're going an hour up to Brisbane, out of the airport, drive around, have a look at a few properties and then come back home. I'm back in a day.
I tried to convince myself the other day when I went to Coffs, and my mate said, "Mate, you got to measure from your door to the door of where you're going. If you're going by a plane or going by a car," he said, "that's the secret." Because I was like, it's only sort of 40 minutes to get to Coffs, and yeah, it's door to door. It adds up a little bit more for I reckon, but it's true. You can do it in a day. It's an easy trip, and it's cheap. The airfares are cheap now. Like they used to be $300, $400, $500. Now you're scoring airfares for $70, $80.
Mark, I went down to Melbourne last week and it was $100 flight return, and I paid parking at the airport, and it was $120 for 2 days.
That's crazy.
So, it's just crazy. Anyway, we're talking about property.
Let's talk about the most important thing of the day. Your best buy for 2021. What does it look like? How did you find it? And how can other people do the same?
Yeah, okay. So I've got a couple of different examples. One is a villa, one a townhouse, and one a house. We bought a villa back in 2021 and bought it for $238,000, 3-bedroom in a gated community. Now we're seeing prices on that one over $350,000. So significant growth in that one. Another one, this was a 3-bedroom townhouse. Again, obviously in a secured environment there. We're seeing at $220,000. We're seeing same prices at $340,000 in the same complex today. So that's like a 40% growth in about 14 months. In terms of a house, we bought and these are all in the Brisbane market. We bought a 4-bedroom house on 330 square meters of land, so really tiny, small, and not much of a backyard. You'd be lucky to swing a cat around it. So most people go, I want the big parcel of land. But we bought a property for $497,000. This goes back to some of the ideas and thoughts around negotiation. I'll get to that in a moment. But $497,000, we saw prices go up to high fives, and now they're actually in the high sixes. So we had a comparable sale just recently, only 10 months later, at $680,000. So significant growth in the Brisbane market. And it's not just the sales growth that's happening. We're seeing rental markets. I've had one personally where a tenant moved out and they were paying $320 a week. The market's moved significantly. I actually advertised it at $495 and end up getting someone. I dropped it down $10 just to see if I could get someone in fairly quick. Then after 10 days, having someone move in at $485. So that was a 50% increase in rent from one tenancy to another. Now, I obviously kept the rent fairly low on the previous tenancy, but once someone moved out, I was able to increase it after that.
So how do you find these places for the average punter?
Well, I think as a buyer's agent, you want to do a couple of different things. First, you're thinking about the macro environment. So where's the best place around Australia to buy? So you're kind of looking at, do I go capital cities or regional? And then we're looking at all the research and data, and we're formulating our ideas to saying, okay, Brisbane, Southeast Queensland looks like a really good market. Within that, then we look into the micro markets. But ultimately, if we're going to think about the market of Brisbane, is where's the best deal right now? So we're interacting with agents all the time. They're our best friends when it comes to getting deals, build rapport with those agents. And we're often in a situation where because we can, we've got a pool of clients that we work with, they'd rather be dealing with us than dealing with an individual home buyer or an individual investor, because they know that we've worked on with these clients, for a couple of weeks or a month to actually get them in a position to get their pre-approvals or have a finance assessment, gear them up about what's happening in the market, and then actually transact. Because what can happen, and you guys might have experienced this, where someone goes into a property, gets everything happening, signs the contract, then they pull out because of finance. Now, if that happens time after time after time, you might go 6 months on a sale of a property, whereas they can almost, to a certain point, 99% of the time, guarantee that we're going to actually be in a situation of transacting and completing on the property, whereas the individual home buyer or investor might actually pull out. So that's a big one for agents.
And how much would you charge to find this wonderful buy in Queensland?
Yeah, so
Normally.
our charges, in terms of buying a property, and we charge a flat fee, makes it nice, simple, and easy for people. If we're buying a property under $250,000, which is kind of that townhouse and unit in the outskirts, we charge $12,000 plus GST. And then if we're buying a property over $250,000, we charge $14,000 plus GST. Now, there are people that charge lower or higher. We give quite a supreme service for clients, holding their hand throughout. There are so many steps in transacting a property. People think it's pretty easy until they get involved themselves. We're there to hold your hand, talk about the market each and every day through the transaction.
And is there an upfront on that?
Yeah, so initial engagement is $1,000 plus GST, but that's included in the total of that price.
There you go. And so are you doing anything outside of Queensland, Luke, when you talk about some of those other states?
Yeah, look, we've bought over the last, 12, 18 months in the Central Coast, in Lake Macquarie, but it's predominantly in the Queensland market because that's where the numbers are working the best right now. If you're buying something, for example, at $500,000, you might get somewhere between $480 and $520 a week rent. So in terms of cash flow, it's low risk, and there's high demand for tenants right now. In terms of affordability, most people that have got equity in their homes in Sydney probably can buy a property between, maybe $500,000 and $700,000. So you can either go to a unit in Sydney or buy in the outskirts of Sydney potentially, but the cash flow is going to be much lower than what you can experience in Queensland.
Yeah.
And what do you reckon's fueling what you're seeing in Queensland? Is it because I'd imagine that just cost of construction alone in the last 12 months has made a lot of stuff more affordable. Like it's so expensive to build something these days. Suddenly it starts inflating existing stock. So building costs. Do you reckon the Olympics is another one that's pumping it up?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think awareness is bringing, it's like a marketing tool for Brisbane right now. So investors go, I'll buy now because it's going to grow the Brisbane market for the Olympics, but it's 10 years away. But I think just the awareness and the attention that it gets is great. In terms of the established market, you mentioned about it right now, because it is the cost of building right now is increasing significantly for people. The established properties are actually doing quite well. Same way is the car sales right now. Secondhand car sales are doing right well because there's no, new brand new coming into the country, right? So that's a significant thing. And same thing, you can't get the materials in the country. Prices are sky high for timber, for steel, and other things. So you're in a situation where that's inflated because people can't buy those brand new properties, and land registrations are slow. Council workers are working from home. Things like that are happening. So that new stock coming onto the market is struggling, and it's at a slow pace. So it's really boosting up that established market.
That's really interesting. I think that's it's definitely worth thinking about, because we had a good chat, Mark and I, about cash flow versus capital growth. For some people, it's a question of what stage are they at in their financial lives. What are their priorities?
Luke doesn't want to arm wrestle me on this one. New South Wales versus Queensland. Oh,
absolutely, mate. I think
that's going to be an ugly arm wrestle.
You know what? We're seeing, Queensland is actually number one right now in terms of growth over the last 12 months. So let's see how that generates for the next, 12 months. And I think I think Queensland will be the winner. I don't know if that's going to happen in the rugby league, but definitely in the housing market.
Yeah, I used to bench press 320 pounds when I was 15, 16 years of age.
How about your running back?
Who cares? I don't care if what Queensland's done in the last 12 months. I want to know what it's done the last 20, 30 years, every year. And I was a one-hit wonder doing bench press for 1 year, and then I didn't do it ever again. But I want to know every year, my whole life when I'm investing.
Look,
But we're not going to.
ultimately, if you buy a property in capital cities in Australia and hold it for 20 years, it's going to grow. Like, that's a simple. And I always talk about, you see my videos before, Mark, and I say buy, buy, buy. You hold it for the long term. Property in Australia grows. Like, you buy, Billy, you just bought in the Northern Beaches. Fantastic, right? You're going to get growth if you hold it for the long term. It's just, maybe you learn different markets. And I think it's not only that investment that you make, but it's the learning that you have. Learning about different markets when you have skin in the game is super important. So I advocate for people to buy and hold for the long term. Be patient.
That's what we definitely all got in common. Hey, it's not. What's that saying? It's not timing. It's time in the market. So the longer you hold, the better you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your wise words to Billy would be as a young bloke, as a buyer's agent,
buy more property.
Buy.
The ability to buy more. Like, I think property is actually more of a finance game than a property game. If you can get the money, leverage, get into the market, buy as many properties. I've built a property portfolio. It sets me up for cash flow in future, for retirement. I just like, the world's richest people, what do they make their money on? It's on property. Absolutely, Michelle. Buy.
That's it.
All right. That's a show, lads. Luke, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your support over the years. And you've got some unbelievable wisdom from your experience that you've done. So anyone who needs to buy, a buyer's agent wants to buy, particularly it would be out of Sydney, would it be? Like, I think you're saying more Queensland, Central Coast. Is that right, Luke?
Yeah, typically for investors. So, looking at those opportunities where the numbers are going to work. And right now for us, it's in Queensland.
There you go. Thank you, buddy.
Thank
you, guys. Appreciate the invitation to come on. It's good to share.
No worries. Let's do it again. This was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Big numbers today as well. Huh?
I can talk for hours.
Mate, awesome. You're a legend. Thanks heaps. Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.